Okay, so staying on the subject of puppets, we'll take a look at this clown here. I'm going to show you a clip of Ed Miliband. What's important is not what he says, but how many times he says it. Just watch this.
These strikes are wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on, but parents and the public have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. After today's disruption, I urge both sides to put aside the rhetoric, get round the negotiating table and stop it happening again.
I listened to your speech in Wrexham and you talked about the Labour Party being a movement. A lot of people in that movement are the people who are on strike today, and they'll be looking at you and thinking, well, you're describing these strikes as wrong. Why aren't you giving us more leadership as a leader of the Labour movement?
At a time when negotiations are still going on, I do believe these strikes are wrong. And that's why I say both sides should, after today's disruption, get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and sort the problem out. Because the public and parents have been let down by both sides. The government's acted in a reckless and provocative manner.
Well, I spoke to Francis Moore before I came here, and the tone he was striking was a very conciliatory one. Do you think there's a difference between the words they're saying in public and the attitude they're striking in private in these negotiations? Are there negotiations in good faith, would you say?
What I say is that the strikes are wrong when negotiations are still going on, but the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner in the way it's gone about these issues. After today's disruption, I urge both sides to get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric, and stop this kind of thing happening again.
It's a statement you've made publicly and you'll make to me, and this will be broadcast obviously, but have you spoken privately to any union leaders and expressed your view to them on a personal level, would you say?
Well, what I say in public and in private to everybody involved in this is get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and stop this kind of action happening again. These strikes are wrong because negotiations are still going on, but parents and the public have been let down by the government as well, who've acted in a reckless and provocative manner.
You're a parent, I'm a parent, a lot of people watching this will be parents. Has it affected you personally, this action? Has it affected your family, your friends? I mean, and what is the net effect of that going to be on parents having to take a day off work today?
I think parents up and down the country have been affected by this action, and it's wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on. Parents have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. I think that both sides should, after today's disruption, get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and stop this kind of thing happening.
All right. 5 times. 5 times he said exactly the same thing. Now, what that tells me is that those words have been written down and pretty much learned. And I would ask the question, who has written those words? Has he written them and learned them? Someone else written them and learned them? If someone else has written them and he learned them, that means he's 100% a puppet. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wrote them down and learned them. Is that the behaviour of a leader? Not in my opinion. The only thing that we should be saying to the likes of Ed Miliband, and I would include David Cameron, Theresa May and Hague and the lot of them, the only question we should be getting involved with them is take me to your leader. That's it. Because he's not the leader and neither is David Cameron. And this is what we need to be exposing in British politics. The fact that they're all puppets who and are answerable to unseen puppet masters. Take me to your leader. And what about the interviewer there, the journalist who sat there and happily listened to the same answer 5 times? He's part of the same puppet show. So our media are just as much to blame for the trash that they present us with.
Do you ever get the feeling that the news anchors on television are just mindless media parrots repeating the same talking points over and over again? Well, if you haven't, you might after seeing this.
In consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year. Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some of the spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take the spring out of the step of the Easter Bunny this year.
I don't know about you, but I'm getting the feeling that economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year. But seriously, kudos to Conan OBrien for once again exposing the media repeaters. Look guys, obviously this is no coincidence. So the question remains, where are all these news stations getting their scripts from? Well, there are affiliate news services that supply packages and scripts to hundreds of stations around the country. Stations then have their anchors read the canned story with the generic script. Now, you might look at this and say it's just indicative of how lazy local news can be. But consider the implications of this kind of reporting for 1 second. Say it wasn't an Easter bunny, and rather the story being mindlessly regurgitated was about a virus, a terrorist attack, or a report on war casualty counts. The bottom line is that people who watch the news tend to trust this information that then influences their perception and decisions. So for these anchors to ask no questions, do no fact-checking, and hold no differing interpretation of the news they're delivering is not only absurd, it's downright dangerous.
Campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty. The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
The final days of the campaign can get a little salty. The final days of the campaign can get a little salty.
As you've probably noticed, the final days of the campaign have been, well, you might call them just a little salty.
The only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube.
The end of email overload?
Could this be 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 the end of your email overload?
Could this be the end of 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 that email overload?
Could this be the end of 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 email overload?
Could this be the end to email overload?
Could this be the end of 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 email?
When the largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be made of the truth on this.
You know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest. I scream, you scream, you know the rest. Well, I scream, you scream, you know the rest. I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest. I scream, you scream, we all, well, you know the rest.
Got it. I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, we all know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, we all know the rest of it, right? I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest. I scream, you scream, and you know the rest. I scream, you scream. You know the rest. I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
Well, I scream, you scream, well, I think you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, and everybody knows the rest. I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, and you know the rest.
I scream, you scream.
So you listen to me. Listen to me. Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park.
Retail calendar that can be enjoyed from a desk or the couch.
Enjoyed from a desk or a couch.
Enjoyed from a desk or maybe the couch.
Enjoyed from a desk or the couch.
Enjoyed from a desk or the couch.
Enjoyed from the desk or even the couch.
Enjoyed from a desk or the couch.
From a desk or the couch. From a desk or the couch.
From a desk or a couch.
From a desk or your couch. From the desk or the couch. From the desk or the couch.
From a desk or the couch.
From a desk or a couch.
From your desk or the couch.
From a desk or the couch.
From a desk or a couch.
From a desk or the couch.
From a desk or even the couch.
From a desk or the couch.
Enjoyed from a desk or a couch.
From a desk
Or the couch.
from a desk or the couch. Or wherever you like.
Turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. In the heart of this great city, we saw tragedy arrive on a quiet morning. September the 11th. September the 11th. September the 11th.
September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th.
September 11th, September 11th.
September 11th, September 11th.
September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th, 2001. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam. Saddam. Saddam.
Saddam.
Saddam. Saddam. Saddam. Saddam. Saddam. Saddam.
Saddam. Saddam.
Saddam Hussein.
War and danger. Continuing danger.
Hour of danger.
Very, very dangerous world.
A grave new threat.
Horrific acts of atrocities. Murderous regimes dedicating to killing us. Tyranny and terror. Slaughtered thousands.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction. Weapons programs.
The deadliest of weapons.
Terrible weapons. Nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons.
Poison gas.
Torture chambers. Mass graves.
Deadly technologies.
Radical ideology of hate.
Terror of threats.
Terror.
Terror.
Terror. War on terrorism. War against terrorism.
Global war on terror.
Global terrorism. 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 Evil terrorists. 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 Terrorists.
Terrorist, 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 terrorist.
Terrorists. 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 Terrorists.